Good afternoon. Today is the 23rd day of January 2016 in our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri. And as always, it is our great honor to have our brother Alok Pandey with us. Today, I begin with an edited version of some of Narad remembrances. I will continue this for some days. He writes, Sri Aurobindo's disciples were concerned about a physical problem that had appeared, and Narad writes, as we expected, after a couple of months or so, the symptoms cleared up altogether. And when Dr. Sanyal came for the next darshan, Sri Aurobindo told him emphatically, "It is no more troubling me. I have cured it." Our faith was confirmed. The work on his epic poem, Savitri, went ahead with vigor and enthusiasm. Book after book was being revised and released for publication. Some 400 to 500 lines he dictated in succession, whose beauty and flow were a delight, for their sweep of cosmic vision and their magical language. At this rate, Savitri, it seemed, would not take long to finish. On everybody's lips was the eager question, how far, Savitri? So today we continue with Book 2, Canto 4, the book of the traveler of the worlds, the kingdoms of the little life.
So this was very interesting that we see in Sri Aurobindo. There are times when he is above the law. As you know, when there was a circular which went around the ashram, and the mother retorted and admonished, saying that you ought to have known that Sri Aurobindo was perfectly conscious, even till the last moments. He got up, he took a glass of water, asked for Nirod, embraced Champaklalji.
Yes.
But then there would be moments when it would appear that he has gone under the law which afflicts all mankind. And this is the beauty of the avatar, that he doesn't come as a freak. As a master, you can be a freak. You are above the law, you don't get into the law, you station yourself at a certain plane of consciousness above the mind in one of those illumined regions. And you act from there, sending rays of divine compassion and lifting out as many as you can lift out, as many as you can help. But the avatar, though he is also the master, but he has to pass beneath the yoke that he comes to unloose. So, Sri Aurobindo's going beneath the yoke, this is part of that journey. What we just read a portion from Nirodha's famous, I am here. But this was a question that many had. So what really was happening? And because he had to go beneath the law into the domain of death, to really fix up things there and clear the passage. When Nirodha asked him that we have seen you cure many persons with, those powers which he had in its head, his command, the supramental power.
Yes.
He said, why can't you do it? Are you applying it? When momentarily, there was a day when everything seemed clear and bright. And Nirodha asked him that, I hope, you are using your power to heal yourself. And he said, no. And he was in for a shock. And he said, why not? And all that Sri Aurobindo said is, can't explain, you won't understand.
You won't understand.
So the avatar goes under the yoke to liberate the rest of the humanity. Otherwise, it was very easy for him to go above the law, to do all kinds of stunningly miraculous things.
And he also said very clearly that unless he took up that burden,
Yes.
how would we
Yes,
even begin to understand his path
absolutely.
and ours?
And so here we see something of that how Sri Aurobindo has looked upon the minutest of phenomenon, and it's a treat both to the listening ear as well as to the inner understanding, that how he has seen even the phenomenon of the cell. We are on page 137, and we stopped with this wonderful line, but just not so his spirit's vacant eye. So one is that he has seen the totality, and yet he doesn't see it as futile. Even the worm, the clod, the dust has a place and a role and a meaning and a purpose in the grand scheme of things. As shines a solitary witness star that burns apart, light's lonely sentinel in the drift and teeming of a mindless night, a single thinker in an aimless world, awaiting some tremendous dawn of God, he saw the purpose in the works of time. This burning of a solitary sentinel star in the thick of night reminds me of an incident in Sri Aurobindo's life when he went to Chandanagar. So he went, as we know, that at an inner Adesh, and as he went to Chandanagar, Motilal Roy, who had housed him, because he was politically sought after, and almost the whole British government, it's like a lookout notice, look out for the divine in strange ways. But anyways, so he was housed in a place below the basement. So this is how in ancient times many rich people used to have place below, like a basement. Now basements are very common, used for different purposes, but it used to be to hide money, to hide all kinds of things, and even if there are robbers, to hide yourself. And the robbers very well knew where the basement is, and the first thing they would look for is the basement, and they would stretch a carpet. So this used to be the thing. And Motilal Roy, of course, was a rich man, zamindar. So he let Sri Aurobindo stay there. So his wife did not know. Nobody knew. Nobody was breathed a word about it. So as usual, one day this lady decided that I must clean the basement. For a long time it has not been clean. So she took a broom, and as she went down the stairs, Sri Aurobindo was with his gaze fixed, eyes open, staring into space. And what she saw was suddenly as if there are lamps of light burning in that darkness. This is how she described it. And she was stunned. What is this? She'd never expected. And so in that state, she just had the broom lifted up, and she is all amazed and astonished. And what did Sri Aurobindo remark? Sri Aurobindo also looked at her. And Sri Aurobindo remarked in Bengali, when later on, he told to Motilal Roy, "Ar Kali Sakshat hoye gelo." I saw Kali manifest before me. Broom in hand, darkness of night, and suddenly this lady, almost with awe and amazement, maybe her tongue popped out. Ha! What is this? And he says he saw in her Kali, because also, when these women go down, even physically, because it's very hot, so they take off the upper portion, the sari, and it's just a blouse. And Sri Aurobindo sees in her Mother Kali come. What a vision, what an experience. So in that night, like a solitary sentinel star, in that mindless night.
Oh, I wanted to say that I'm not recommending this to any of you, but I was taken to a house in Pondicherry where Sri Aurobindo stayed. And he stayed on the top floor.
Yes.
And there was a little glass about a foot by a foot, where you could see downstairs who was coming up or who might be coming up. We entered that room, and the peace, it did passeth all understanding. Yes. It was so fantastic. Oh. Yes. And the lady, Tamil lady, was so kind and let us all come up and stay as long as we wanted.
This, of course, is in Pondicherry.
In Pondicherry.
If you go to Baroda, Baroda, the place where Sri Aurobindo lived, you will actually feel that it's like you are in Sri Aurobindo's room. Other than this place, if there is another place where you will distinctly feel Sri Aurobindo's atmosphere, it's in Baroda. It's amazing. I mean, those who have gone, and that time he was not even that way, a Siddha yogi. When he came here, he already had all these experiences. But it's amazing. Even in that aimlessness, a work was done. So we all have hope. If insects can have hope, if worms can have hope, we all have hope. Pregnant with magic will and change divine. So what is this will? Do they have a will? It's just instincts. Yet there is inside it, burning in the depths and core even of the atom, a will divine, which is pushing things towards a certain direction, and change divine. So every, we look at things moment to moment. We see, okay, worm, what will be the change in a worm? At the most, he'll just die and perish. But he sees that change as pregnant with a change divine. And in the worm, foresees the coming God. So here is this vision. And now you see next few lines, we look at serpent, the king of serpents, King Cobra, raising its head. And it's said that sometimes it's also, there are rare serpents who live for many years, and they have, at least in India, this is a myth, that they grow on their top of their head, crown, a kind of money. And there are famous stories that, there are people searching for that money because it can grant immortality. And it's obviously a fable, but it's very symbolic fable. Now, everything in creation is a symbol. And how Sri Aurobindo sees this, the serpent world? The first writhings of the cosmic serpent force. And that's why even in dreams and otherwise, when one sees serpents, they can represent either hostile forces or evolutionary energy. Yes. So the serpent that bit Adam and whispered into his ears that eat it is the evolutionary energy that pushed Adam beyond the comfort zone of an innocent life, as we read yesterday in Ahana, to go through the entire circle of mental evolution, spiral, to eventually be wise as a god and mighty as a titan. So this is the whole story of the serpent, and look at it. The first writhings of the cosmic serpent force. In Kundalini also we have the image of the serpent precisely because of this, because it's an evolutionary force. Uncoiled from the mystic ring of matter's trance. Look at this description. It raised its head in the warm air of life. It could not cast off yet night's stiffening sleep, or wear as yet mind's wonder flecks and streaks, put on its jeweled hood, the crown of soul. So we see actually, these hooded serpents, and with, with those jewel, which I don't know whether anyone has ever found them, but there are stories about searching for that jeweled serpent with. So what is it? It's the manifestation of the soul power even in the serpent world. Now, this is how he sees it. Or stand erect in the blaze of spirit's sun. So this is the first effort of life to really try out an experiment. Obviously, the form does not support it at the material level. So we see simultaneously, Sri Aurobindo is showing us the spirit and matter, and the spirits dealing with matter through the process of evolution. As yet were only seen foulness and force. It tried, but what ultimately came down was only foulness and force. The secret crawl of consciousness to light. Look at crawling serpent, looking at it as crawl of consciousness to light. And if you live in that vision, things become very different. Mother recounts this story to Huta. She says, when Ramakrishna was bit by a cobra. I have not read this story anywhere, but mother has said so. So, we take it that it's true. So, he was in a very exalted state. And then when he looked at the serpent biting him, all that he said was, Kali, you have come now again? And nothing happened to him. This mother recounts this in Mother You Said So. Kali, you have come again. He didn't see the serpent. He saw another vision. When in Raman Maharishi's life, similarly a snake fell down suddenly and everybody was terrified. So they asked him that, what happened? You were just continuing to sit there. He said, why? This too is he. Saw the one. With mother, because he had the integral vision. When she was meditating in Algeria, suddenly this one, she opens her eyes, she feels there is something uneasy presence.
Yes.
She sees hooded cobra right in front. And she looks into the eyes and wonders, why is he angry? Look at this. And then she realizes that she's sitting on his house or home because, at the base of the tree was the cobra's nest. So she slowly, without disturbing anything, looked into the eyes and slightly moved away. And the cobra was assured. She must have communicated, and as we know that the king of Serpent World had also come to her that, I'll never bite any of your children provided you assure me that your children will never harm me. So she said, I cannot assure this from my children's side. They are quite capable. They may very well harm you. I can't give this assurance. But nevertheless, then the moment this cobra saw that, she doesn't mean harm, she gently put his head down, turned back, went back into the pond from where he had come. So look, how a yogi really sees and how a yogi understands life and the entire process and communicates at the level of consciousness. It's amazing. And this is the world they want to open to our sight. Through a fertile slime of lust and battening sense. Serpents are also associated with fertility and of course lust. So look here that nature has to arouse the clod. So it needs something very powerful to just awaken. And through a fertile slime of lust and battening sense, beneath the body's crust of thickened self, a tardy, fervent working in the dark, the turbid yeast of nature's passionate change, ferment of the soul's creation out of mire. So this is the early emergence of life in the reptile world, in the crocodile, in the serpent, and how beautifully Aurobindo describes it and puts it in place with the larger picture. Then we see that how everything has a place and purpose. A heavenly process donned this grey disguise. A fallen ignorance in its covert night labored to achieve its dumb, unseemly work, a camouflage of the inconscient's need to release the glory of God in nature's mud. So, the glory of God wants to emerge out of matter and inconscient puts on its cover, clamps it. The glory is still there and the yogi sees it. We see only the camouflage, the inconscience. Even this matter, several times the mother says, this is not true matter. This has come because of the contact of the inconscience, and that is why it is so rigid, so hard. Everything, moves towards rigidity and eventual collapse. And repeatedly she says that the true matter is the subtle physical. And Aurobindo would also say this. Now the whole question was how this true matter can actually come freely into the play. That of course is there in the agenda very beautifully, and some other time we can speak about that. His sight, now his sight is of course Ashwapati's, his sight, spiritual in embodying orbs, could pierce through the grey phosphorescent haze and scan the secrets of the shifting flux that animates these mute and solid cells. Beautifully. So he knew what is happening inside the cells, and he'll take us further, and leads the thought and longing of the flesh and the keen lust and hunger of its will. This too he tracked along its hidden stream and traced its acts to a miraculous fount. It's like, the other days in that wireless telegraphy. So we see only the letters. You trace it where? You trace it back to where they use the Morse code. You track it further. Then you discover, oh, someone has discovered a power in nature which can express through this notation. Then those who could trace it to the origin, they found, oh, there can be other ways of doing this in a much better way. But those who were satisfied only with the surface phenomena were either awed or impressed or whatever.
Yeah.
And even then, even about this wireless telegraphy, both Aurobindo and Swami Vivekananda write something very interesting. Aurobindo in the Life Divine, he says, this is a good step that, science has taken. But there is still an encumbrance. Ultimately, it will reach a point where there is only at the transmitting and the receiving point. That's all that is required. And you can tap the forces of nature and communicate. And we have now the cell phones. And exactly the same thing Swami Vivekananda said. So you see, we see the surface notations. But if you trace the notations to the source, then we discover what is this creature really struggling to achieve. So in most human beings, it's a hunger for bliss, but they don't know what is bliss. So they end up, looking for toys of bliss, what we read yesterday. A mystic presence none can probe nor rule. So it's very difficult to see this presence hidden inside the cell. At the same time, by using this other part or rule, he makes it clear that this presence is immune. He is not bound by the cell or its habits or the movements of nature, but it has chosen to be there. None can rule. A fragile captain of an expert captain of a fragile craft.
Yes.
So that's how. Creator of this game of ray and shade, in this sweet and bitter paradoxical life, asks from the body the soul's intimacies, and by the swift vibration of a nerve, links its mechanic throbs to light and love.
That's beautiful.
So that's where the wireless telegraphy. It's a notation. So if you look at creation as a symbol, all activities as a symbol. Of course, it's not that, but this is the first impulse. Mother would repeatedly say what human beings call as love is not love. It's a deformation. But at the same time, it's a deformation which origin is in the divine. That's why she says there is only one love. It's the supreme love. And when we love another, it is the divine in us which reaches out to the divine in another. And when we are imperfect, ignorant, then we use very imperfect means to express it. When our consciousness is like an animal, we use animal means. When our consciousness is like a human being, we use human beings. When our consciousness is like a God, the means are also godly. So this is where, but the power is the same. That's why in Savitri we have abased, disfigured, yet love is the angel with which all can change.
Yes.
Even though it is abased, disfigured upon earth, but it is still that angel which leans from the far transcendent, lean on the absolute. Man's lean on the absolute.
I love that line.
Yes.
Man's lean. A lean, huh?
Speaking
a
of
lean as you
love.
would have on a house.
Yes. On the absolute. It is the angel which has come here, chosen to be disfigured. We have this symbol in Indian, we grew up with many stories. Mother said India is a land of stories. So one of the stories was about river Ganges. And it comes from the origin, so pure and everything. And there is a place where it meets the sea. It's called Ganga Sagar. Now, if you go to that place, it's horrible, dirty. Obviously it's carrying all the muck and even everything possible. So, yet it is regarded as a very sacred spot. So, people overlook the dirt and take a dip that, look, it's purifying. Now, for me, this whole story came clear when I read all these things. I said, oh, still it is Ganges, abased, disfigured. Still, it carries something of that vibration, and if we can contact it, then it has a liberating power.
Did you take the dip?
I never went. No, this is a very interesting story since you spoke about it. I have a very beautiful rapport with the Ganges. Long back, I had a very beautiful vision of the Ganges, Mother Ganges, and she came and many things happened. That's a different side of the story. But since then, I had very interesting rapport with the Ganges. Once in Hooghly, when I sat on the steps, so Ganges was quite below, and slowly, slowly she would swell, swell, swell. And my friend who was with me, he was keen that now, it's like, let's move up a few more steps up. I said, no, don't you see a mother is coming to greet her child? Don't get up. So it came up to the knee within a matter of half an hour or 1 hour. And it was like literally the mother embracing. And every time I pass through the Ganges, wherever it is, if I am resting, I'll suddenly wake up. And so for me, Ganges is a living reality. But I don't believe in, formalities of going to the Haridwar Pandits and the Ghats. I avoid that because, they totally distort the whole thing. But she is a living goddess. I really believe. And I'm sure all the rivers in some way represent some kind of a living entity. And the mountains.
Yes.
It's just that it's sealed to our vision.
I was in Hardwar with Ravi Bansal, you may have heard
Yes,
of him.
I know.
And that river called to me.
Yes.
And in the freezing weather, I immersed myself.
Right.
It was the most beautiful experience.
Yes,
You
yes.
come out feeling clean.
Yes, and these are energies. Like in
Yes.
Varanasi, I had a very beautiful feeling about the town despite all the problems. And then I read in the agenda, Mother saying that Benares has a very good spiritual energy. So, it struck me that, oh my God, this is, something.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there are so many ways of looking at creation. And it's so interesting that these are just symbols and notations of a deeper reality. It summons the spirit's sleeping memories. Look how, when you wake up through these methods. Otherwise, probably if you tell the child, today you have a fourth period is sports, child will not get up. So you start with small little things. Then the child wakes up, probably irritated, dazed after a while, and then he says, I look forward to that. So these are ways to wake up matter from its sleep. And how it wakes up summons the spirit's sleeping memories up from subconscious depths beneath time's foam, oblivious of their flame of happy truth. Arriving with heavy eyes that hardly see, they come disguised as feelings and desires. Like weeds upon the surface, float a while and rise and sink on a somnambulist tide. This is a very good meditation Mother gives us in words of long ago. See, if you observe carefully your feelings, you will see that they literally like waves, they come and they fall and they don't endure. It's true of impulses also. This is one of the techniques we, of course, teach in psychotherapy. That don't just drift with it. Wait and watch. You will see that it will reach an intensity after which it will go away. So how beautifully she describes like reeds and weeds floating on the surface. It comes up from the depth, takes the form of feelings, impulsions. So we can go to its source into the depth, then we discover something beautiful. Or we can just be on the surface. And Mother describes this so practically in prayers and meditation. So when she leaves the shores, obviously we can imagine how people would have suffered, what they would have felt in her presence. And she says, I suffered with the suffering of those who were attached. She has felt this suffering. And then she says, this suffering at one level is both puerile as well as there is in it something divine. So the puerile part is that, it's a attachment to the form and, this is one way to look at it. But she says it's in ignorance, another way that love tries to manifest itself. So what we should do, she says, when we suffer like this, we should go into the depths and discover that space where there is oneness. And then the suffering ceases and changes into its pure form. Beautifully she describes it. So we can take that feeling, trace it to its source, as Ashapati is doing. Then we discover, This is a very distorted expression of love. It is a lot of practical, implications. When children come and, they are unhappy with their parents, say, I don't like them. So very often I ask this only one question. Do you think they love you? Yes, they love me. This is a distorted expression of their love. But they love you. You are sure of that. Yes, I'm sure of that. Isn't that more important than, how it is being expressed? It's expressed in imperfect ways, fine, fair enough. But love is there. Yes, that is there. So very often, big issues can get sorted with just this insight suddenly. Yes, I didn't look at it like that because I was so lost in the expression. Expression is imperfect.
Or reacted.
Yes, feelings and desires. Impure, degraded through her, though her motions are. So that's what, impure, degraded though her motions are, always a leaven truth, always a heaven truth, broods in life's deeps.
And there, what you said, just what you said.
Yes. That's why it can be divinized. Aurobindo says that life can be divinized because it originates in the divine. Therefore, at the source of every activity and movement, you can trace it to its divine origin, but it's distorted in the manifestation. Can make the manifestation perfect, then it can be something beautiful. In her obscurest members burns that fire. Look at it. A touch of God's rapture in creation's acts, a lost remembrance of felicity, lurks still in the dumb roots of death and birth.
Could I read the next lines?
Yes. Why not from here itself, the world's?
The world's senseless beauty mirrors God's delight. That rapture's smile is secret everywhere. It flows in the wind's breath, in the tree's sap. Its hued magnificence blooms in trees and in leaves and flowers. When life broke through its half-drowse in the plant, that feels and suffers but cannot move or cry.
Now look at this. Who discovered that, plants can feel?
Yeah.
Feels and suffers. Look at this beauty of this line. At once science, at once spiritual.
Yeah. And we have these scientists who made all of these tests.
Yeah.
Bose was one of the first.
When in Aurobindo, in Arya, there used to be a column called News of the Month. So in News of the Month, Aurobindo had actually noted about Sir J.C. Bose's discovery.
Yeah.
And he said this testifies what the yogis already knew. And he saw it as an unleashing of a new idea force.
Yes.
That plants have consciousness. And then when this was discovered, one of the scientists said, hey, what next? Metals have consciousness. My God, we are living in strange times. Well, we already speak about it. Metal fatigue and things like that.
If you would like to read Tompkins and Bird, The Secret Life of Plants, it's an excellent book.
Yes, true.
When life broke through its half-drowse in the plant, that feels and suffers, but cannot move or cry, in beast and in winged bird and thinking man, it made of the heart's rhythm its music's beat.
Even this is very interesting. Heart's rhythm, its music's beats. I don't know. I have no way to prove it, but sometimes it will be proved. But there are certain disorders of the heart rhythms. They are called as arrhythmias.
Yes.
And in old times, even now, if you read the description, one of them, a common one which takes place in middle-aged people, atrial fibrillation and atrial, things like that. It is actually called as delirium of the heart.
Huh.
And actually, I have seen that it has to do with our emotional nature, these arrhythmias. So one of the ways to correct the problems of the heart is to look into our emotions and work upon that level. This, I don't have a scientific proof because, it would need a huge lab testing, but it's based on a solid spiritual understanding. It's the heart that cuts out emotions modes. It is life that flows through each pulsation. And that's why it's the central point of energizing. But again and again, I must say, give a disclaimer, I have no scientific evidence about it, no issue. But personally, I would be very happy to try these things. It made of the heart's rhythm, its music's beat. It's the music of life.
It forced the unconscious tissues to awake and ask for happiness and earn the pang and thrill with pleasure and laughter of brief delight and quiver with pain and crave for ecstasy.
And look at this line. Ask for happiness and earn the pang.
Earn the pang.
And this too, otherwise it would be too satisfied with that little happiness. Brief lived delight. Nature has really organized this game in a very grand way. Now, why little happiness? So that we are ready for that ultimate gazing on the light of the sun. Those who practice, who are sun gazers, start like this. They advise that, first look at the early morning sun, then slowly for many days, please again, don't try all these things, but this is the process they advocate. That put your eyes on, hands on the eyes, and then you just, feel the sun. In ancient times, this used to be natural healing, one of the processes that people used to use. And then slowly you can gaze at the sun, and it gives you a different kind of energy. Now, this is the same process of evolution. There is a solid logic behind it. That evolution cannot be suddenly that out of mud you have flying angels. You'll have butterflies and birds, not flying angels. So, because, the form cannot bear that intensity, even though all the spirit force is there, even in the, creature of the mud. Even in a blade of grass, it's there fully. But it just holds itself and only a little escapes. And then slowly it accustoms itself. And that's why, until we discover ourselves in our totality, all delight, all happiness will necessarily be brief. Otherwise, we will refuse to evolve. So, perfect logic. So, imperative, voiceless, ill understood, too far from light, too close to being score, born strangely in time from the eternal bliss, it presses on heart's core and vibrant nerve. Its sharp self-seeking tears our consciousness. Our pain and pleasure have that sting for cause. Where does the sting come from? From within. It's pressing us for more. Life is never satisfied. There is a very beautiful poem of Aurobindo where he says, there is a need within the soul of man. The splendors of the surface never sate. For life and mind and their glory and debate are the slow prelude of a vaster theme, a preface to the epic supreme. So it presses from within. We are not dissatisfied because of someone else. That's the easy path. Because within us there is this cry for infinite bliss. How can a finite object provide it? It's illogical. It's not possible. But we get trained step by step. First you handle toys of bliss. First you handle a toy plane. Then you build the real one. So that's how the logic works. Not because of some bad karmas we suffer. Instinct with it, but blind to its true joy, the soul's desire leaps out towards passing things. Aurobindo's famous letter where he says, it is not because there is something bad in you that you suffer. Blows come to all human beings. And then he says, why? Because they are attached to things which in their very nature are transient. So simple. So instead of being attached to the thing, now many people then wash away the baby with the bath water. Okay, I will isolate myself. Then they get attached to themselves. Which is very dangerous, even more dangerous. Better to be attached to things and people than yourself. But the secret is to transmute attachment into love. love all things. They belong to God, they don't belong to us. World's senseless beauty mirrors God's delight.
Yes.
But the moment you get attached, the moment you believe you possess it, you had it. Because that's it, not there in the nature. They don't belong to anyone, they belong to the divine. As he speaks about money, it is today in your hands, it will pass into other hands tomorrow. You're just a trustee. Man holds on to it till death. My money, my account. Then when he sheds the body, he holds on to it as a serpent. Sits around it, guarding it, till somebody comes and finishes. And the children squander it away. That's the unfortunate part. But this is an illusion. This is mine. We need that frame. Otherwise people say, oh, then nothing is mine, why should I take interest? So nature creates this illusion. Oh, it is mine, then they will get involved. And then slowly they discover, go faster and wider, till they discover its infinity. And look, these lines. All nature's longing, drive, none can resist, comes surging through the blood and quickened sense. An ecstasy of the infinite is her cause. This is it. Whole secret in kingdoms of the little life he has revealed to us. An ecstasy of the infinite is the cause of what? The sting of life, the seeking of life, the joy of life, the pain of life, the pleasure of life, and its search for ecstasy which somewhere, somehow it tries to find. Because it's the infinite ecstasy chasing it from within. Find me, find me, find me. So it goes here, there, everywhere, till it discovers, oh, it is within me. When it discovers it, then all is delight everywhere. It turns in us to finite loves and lusts. That is another reason for death. Because we seek the infinite through finite forms and on the basis of a finite life. We cannot. So we have to change forms, have new experiences. So for instance, somebody born and brought up in a village in India sees the television. That's why I feel televisions have accelerated the evolution. Wants to see New York City. And he has to come again and be born in New York to go. Nowadays, of course, we can have the experience much easily. No, it's not a joke. There was a man here whose name was starting with P. I forget the name. But he was supposed to be the horse of the queen of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai, who was supposed to be a vibhuti of the mother. And she was one of those three great ones who started the freedom movement in India. Very valiant warrior who, fought the war against the British with 1-year-old child. And his horse took birth and was reborn here. And one day he wrote a letter to the mother. He was mentally also very, subnormal, and he walked like a horse, as people say. And one day he wrote to the mother, "Mother, I want to have an American wife." So mother wrote in red pen by the side of the letter, "Not in this life." Of course, it was very practical. After 2 days, he died. So you see, this rebirth, because why not? It's an infinite. Nobody can be ready for that infinity till you have gone through. You always think that the grass on the other side of the fence is greener. So okay, you go there, experience it till ultimately you discover all grass is the same. So this is how evolution goes on. It turns in us. An ecstasy of the infinite is her cause. It turns in us to finite loves and lusts, the will to conquer and have, to seize and keep, to enlarge life's room and scope and pleasure's range, to battle and overcome and make one's own, the hope to mix one's joy with others' joy, because it's seeking for that infinity. It cannot be happy with just one. A yearning to possess and be possessed, to enjoy and be enjoyed, to feel, to live. The entire gamut of. And you see, this is so true that you may go to a beautiful place and watch it alone, or a good film, watch it alone. But when you go with friends, everybody's joy tends to increase. How it happens? Mixing others' joy. You may go alone, you like it. It's a very quiet, nice thing. And time to time it's good. But at the same time, the same experience. Nothing has changed. The same movie, it's the same place, it's the same journey. But the joy gets enhanced. Of course, sometimes the pain can get enhanced or mar the joy. Depends on who you go with.
But the yearning to possess and be
Possessed. That is, and Aurobindo says that in synthesis, all love seeks for it. It's its nature, but seeks it wrongly. You cannot do it physically, outwardly. To be possessed and to possess is only possible in the divine consciousness, in its utter freedom and infinity. Last few lines. Here was its early, brief attempt to be, its rapid and momentary delight, whose stamp of failure haunts all ignorant life. It's foredoomed to failure. If somebody believes that, no, this time it's going to make me happy, then one is just fooling oneself. It's foredoomed to failure. It's stamped, look at it. Nature has stamped it, foredoomed to failure. So one has to remember that this is stamped, inflicting still its habit on the cells. So even when one knows it's foredoomed to failure, still, now he is talking about a very deep truth which Mother spoke about, the mind of the cell, the physical mind which keeps up its habit. That's the big challenge with diabetics. People give nice advices. It's very easy to give an advice. That's the easiest thing to give. And the most difficult thing is to follow even as simplest of advice. So advice is very easy. Diabetics, don't eat sweets, go for a walk. Everybody knows it. So diabetics all know it. And if you tell them, they will say, yes, yes, yes. We know all this. So where is the problem? We can't follow it. The law of craving. It's in the cells. The cells will hunger. The cells will ask for it. Your mind knows. But the cells will literally crave for it. And what do you do with it? I mean, Canto.
Oh, gosh.
All kinds of problems. He used to laugh at it. He used to say, my body is a laboratory of diseases. If somebody would come and say that, I have pain in my knees. Oh, what kind of a fellow? For a pain in the knee, you are limping. Look at me. All kinds of things I have in my body. You name it and I have it. Diabetes, gastritis, ulcer, everything. And he knew the names. And yet, he would carry a rasgulla, handi, go to the lake, eat the rasgullas and write poetry. Again, disclaimer, please don't try it. It is okay for Nishikanto who saw that Mother Kali in the Divine Mother. So somebody would complain, Mother, he was eating rasgullas at the lake. Mother called Nishikanto. Nishikanto, did you eat rasgullas at the lake? Yes, Mother. Why did you eat it? Don't you know it can make you ill? Mother, do you want Mother Kali's child to be afraid? Weird logic. Okay, go. Incorrigible. He could eat anything, Anything, literally anything.
And did.
What poetry?
But tell the story of what Sri Aurobindo told him if you stay here.
He saw all this in his body.
Yeah.
How his body was weak and not ready. And when he came for the yoga, Aurobindo said, you think again. Yeah. If you remain in the world, you will be a very famous poet. He was in Shantiniketan.
Yes, exactly.
But if you come here, within a short time, your body will be filled with diseases. And again, the same reply, should one worry when one is at the feet of the World Mother? Yeah. Okay, that was his spirit. Yeah. And despite everything, even from deathbed, by Mother's touch, you all know that story, of course.
Yes.
He woke up and another 12 years, he continued to live. And what marvelous poetry. If you read his poetry, of course, there in Bangla, some are translated into English. He used to have visions of poems. Yeah. But in the body. So this is the problem with the cells. It's not just a problem of, as we roughly say, human nature. It's something inbuilt in the cells, programming, which Mother undertook much later to, disinfect them. inflicting still its habit on the cells. The phantom of a dark and evil start, ghost-like pursues all that we dream and do. So it's there. The cells have suffered the first experience of life. The dinosaur is dead, but still alive in some corner of our cell. So that's why that is the big problem. And so it comes alive sometimes on the big screen. Now, all this is a symbol. Something is still alive in human blood which behaves like that. What was the problem of dinosaur? Dinosaurs were devouring all life. And they were capable of doing it. That's why nature wiped off and removed them away. So wherever this impulsion is there, to devour all things, to finish all things, to destroy all things, at least one type of dinosaur, not all of them, they were good fellows also, but hideous ones. Yeah, yeah, I mean, they were vegetarian dinosaurs also. We shouldn't blame entire, they will be racist. We shouldn't be racist. We are very easily racist with regard to animals. We don't even realize that we are being racist. Oh, snakes are bad. Cockroaches are terrible. That's also one type of racism. Now, the same thing takes form as racism at another level. It's the same tendency. The whole thing is bad. We don't see its place in the whole scheme of things, where the snake and the rat have their own place. They balance each other. So this is the problem, and how Aurobindo is stating it beautifully. We'll stop here. We'll just read these few lines and stop, the same lines. Here was its early, brief attempt to be, its rapid end of momentary delight, whose stamp of failure haunts all ignorant life, inflicting still its habit on the cells, the phantom of a dark and evil start, ghost-like pursues all that we dream and do.